The stewards have made their decision on the incident, or almost incident, between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. Today, you see, the time zones, this is where it messes with me doing this, talking about this. It's the afternoon in the U.S., but whenever it was, they decided the proper terminology is the stewards denied Mercedes' request for right of review over the Lewis Hamilton-Max Verstappen clash in Brazil. Of course, this week is the Qatar Grand Prix. We've had 2 practices already, but people are still talking about last week with Brazil and the fight between Hamilton and Verstappen on track when Verstappen himself went wide, but also forced Lewis Hamilton to go wide. And Mercedes decided to call for an investigation by the FIA, and today that decision was reached. We're going to talk about it a bit today, talk about the incident itself. We're going to look at what the stewards had to say about it, and then we'll continue on there, and I'll give my opinion on it. Of course, you can give your opinion on it. Tell me what you think. Was Verstappen in the wrong? Was it just a racing thing? They're just racing hard for a win or whatever. Just let me know what you think, and yeah, we will discuss that. But first, let's look at what the stewards had to say. There will always be some angles of video footage because of limits in both technology and bandwidth that are not available at the time. Whether or not stewards' decisions are considered to be right or wrong, and just as with referees' decisions in soccer, it does not seem desirable to be able to review any or all such in-race discretionary decisions up to 2 weeks after the fact, and the stewards therefore seriously doubt that the intent of the right of review in the ISC is to enable competitors to seek a review of such discretionary decisions that do not follow on from a formal inquiry by the stewards and do not result in a published document. All right, there were some big words thrown in there. But yes, I think one of the points that they made when they referred to the referees, in a soccer game, or as most people call it, football. But yes, I think that can kind of be compared. It's extremely hard to compare, racing to, soccer or basketball, whatever other sport it may be. It's very difficult to compare the two, but I think that is something that we could kind of compare in terms of the judgment decisions. Judgment calls are always extremely difficult, whether you're calling a foul, whether you're calling for a 5-second time penalty. It's extremely difficult to nail 100% of the time. Everyone is human. The FIA, everyone that's up there, they are human. The stewards are human. They're going to make a mistake from time to time. They're going to get things right, but they're also going to get things wrong. And that's where we are here today. Did they get it right? Did they get it wrong? What was the decision? And now, obviously, right after the incident on Sunday, they said there was no review or there was no investigation of the incident at the time. But after the race, after Lewis Hamilton eventually won, of course, on lap 48, it was Verstappen who forced Hamilton wide, but about 10 laps later, Hamilton was able to get ahead of Verstappen, and he went on to win the race at Brazil. So it's not like Verstappen took him out. It's not like Verstappen, this move allowed him to win the race. Hamilton still got ahead. Hamilton still won. But there was the potential if Verstappen gets penalized. I think if he got a 5-second penalty, he would have finished behind Bottas, which would have been crucial for both the drivers and the constructors' championships. But basically, the FIA said, no penalty. No, nothing there. Thanks for filing your request. Nothing there. That is our call. And obviously, as I was just talking about on Sunday, they didn't see the need to review it. But after Mercedes had requested to put an investigation file in, I don't know how you do that. I don't know if you have to write them a letter, send them an email. I don't know how you do it, but Mercedes got them to investigate it. And, leading up through this week, they looked at it. They looked at all the different camera angles. And of course, we didn't have this on Sunday, but later in the week, it came out, the onboard for Max Verstappen's car. They have the onboard just above their heads. You can see them steering the wheel right and left and all that stuff. And so we saw that. I have some still shots here of Verstappen's onboard. And, it's tough to judge because, I'm a fan. Everyone watching this most likely is a fan. And I've never been in a race car. I've never driven a race car, so it's hard for me to judge. I can give you my opinion, but it's hard for me to say he intentionally missed the corner or, whatever it may be. But to me, coming from my point of view, from my perspective, I think it's a racing incident, and I am glad that they just let them race. If Verstappen had made contact with Hamilton, if he had, hit wheels with him, or, he had damaged his front wing or side pod or something like that, then yes, that would have been deserving of a penalty. But they didn't make contact. Both were able to continue on with the race, and eventually Hamilton got by Verstappen and won the race. The better car won the race. So it's not like this move by Verstappen. One, I really don't think it was intentional. I think that he was just trying to get the most out of the car. I think he was trying to get the most out of the corner brake as late as possible. His tires were already worn, and he sent it a little bit too far. He just was trying to keep the lead. He had kept the lead for so long in that race. Mercedes was clearly quicker. He was just trying to do everything he could, and he missed the turn. I mean, he just missed the turn. There's no question about it. He missed the turn, but I don't think he intentionally missed the turn to try to get Lewis Hamilton to back off a bit, I guess. But also, you got to look earlier in the season. They haven't really... The only time they have penalized these two, because, these two are in the championship fight, these two have gotten into it quite a few times this season. This is far from the first time that they have made contact, run each other off the track. Far from the first time that this has happened this year. In fact, in the second race of the season at Imola, we saw them. They didn't make contact, but Verstappen, he pushed Lewis Hamilton into those bumpy curbs. I forget what the technicality is, the technical term, but basically, they've done this before, and we've only seen them be penalized twice, and both of the times that they got penalized, it resulted in a DNF for either one of them or both. Though, of course, the incidents I'm referring to is the one at Silverstone where Hamilton made contact with Verstappen. Verstappen went into the barrier. He was out of the race. And then, of course, Monza, where they were side-by-side entering that first chicane. Verstappen hit the curb. He was launched into the air, and they were both crashed out of the race. Those were the two times that there were penalties. The first one resulted in a 10-second penalty in the race for Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton would rally from that 10-second penalty to win at the British Grand Prix. And then the other one resulted in a 3-place grid penalty for the next race at Russia for Max Verstappen. So they have punished both drivers for their faults in the incident, so I don't think it's an issue of bias by the FIA. People make jokes or they go on social media and say, the Mafia, the Mercedes, I don't know what Mafia, the MA is, but it's the FIA logo and they put an MA in front of it and it's like Mercedes assists FIA, whatever. It's definitely not that. There's not a bias there, like people may say or think. That's just a conspiracy. I don't think there is. But basically, they've let them race quite a bit this year. And as long as there isn't contact, as long as there isn't damage, the FIA's really let them race. Imola is the first example. Spain, remember the first turn at Spain, it's not really a chicane. It's also not really S's. But those first couple turns at Spain, you guys know what I'm talking about. They didn't make contact, but Max Verstappen sent it pretty deep in there, and Hamilton had to kind of move up a little bit. No contact made, nothing too bad there. But I look at Imola and this past Sunday, those are probably the most comparable, if I had to say. I've seen people comparing Brazil to Silverstone, and I think that's absurd. You got Brazil, the corner that they were going into, turn 4, which is a high braking zone. You're braking really hard going into that corner. You're going into a low-speed corner. And, he runs them wide. Silverstone, what's that thing called? Cope's Corner, whatever it's called. That's a very high-speed corner, and you make contact there. What happened, which was Max Verstappen hitting the wall at 50 Gs, that's what's going to happen. Whereas you make contact here, it may take you out of the race, but, that's still bad. Don't get me wrong, but you really can't compare the two, I don't think. So I think people who are comparing Silverstone to Brazil, I don't agree with that at all. But I think Imola and Brazil are the best examples, and they didn't. I don't remember them penalizing Max Verstappen at Imola, and I honestly don't think they should have penalized him this past weekend. I think they made the right decision. I'm not a Red Bull fan. I'm not a Mercedes fan, but I'm very much appreciating this title battle. This is my first full season watching F1, and I have loved every second of this title battle, whether it's on the track with Verstappen and Hamilton, whether it's pitting Bottas or Perez to get the fastest lap to steal that point, or if it's off the track with Christian Horner and Toto Wolff. I mean, this title battle has been amazing, and I would hate to see it ruined or not manipulated. I feel like that's the wrong term, but to be messed with a post-race penalty for forcing someone wide. Now, Verstappen forced him wide, there's no question about it, and Hamilton was eventually able to get around him. So I really don't think there should have been a penalty. I'm glad they did not penalize Max Verstappen. I think that would have been the bad call. You may disagree with me, but there's this whole debate of whose corner was it, and Hamilton was ahead, and then you have Toto Wolff and Christian Horner debating if someone can pass on the outside, if it's possible to pass on the outside, how difficult it is. And I think in the press conference, Toto said that you can't pass on the outside, and then Christian Horner had a great comeback. He didn't insult him, but he said, well, look at Mexico. Max was able to use the outside to pass both Lewis and Valtteri at Mexico. And, obviously Bottas got spun by Ricardo, but it's a difficult thing to judge, especially in Formula One. If this was NASCAR, which is that's what I know the most, no one would blink. No one would think about it. You force them wide. That happens all the time in NASCAR. But in Formula One, with track limits and with the sensitivity of these cars and how easy it is to damage them and, wreck them, when I say easy to wreck them, I mean you make contact, it could end your day. It's more of a touchy subject. It's more of a controversial event, and that's why people are still talking about it this almost week later. And I still am on the train of let them race. As long as they don't wreck each other, as long as they're not banging wheels with each other, as long as they are not driving straight through the corners to force their guy wide, and, Max didn't go straight, he was turning the wheel, let them race. If this was happening on a weekly basis and they were both doing this to each other every single week, then I would say, yes, you've got to draw a line somewhere. This is not a weekly incident. This does not happen every week. It's happened at Brazil, and the last run-in they had was Monza, I think. So back at the beginning of September. They haven't had any real run-ins since then. They've had some great battles, some great racing, but no real run-ins since then. So I'm on the team of let them race, and as long as they don't keep doing this to each other these last 3 races, let them do it. And as for the championship battle, and I gotta say this, but Mercedes, I'm not a Red Bull fan, but you're trying to turn me into one. I'm gonna be honest. After Lewis Hamilton got disqualified on Saturday, they make this social media post and they say, we're not gonna appeal the decision, which, okay, good for you, All right, cool. But then they say, we want to win our championships on the racetrack. And then they showed just that on Sunday with Hamilton and his amazing performance. I was like, wow, that was really impressive. They were serious. And then on Monday, they file a claim of an investigation, and that's not exactly on the track. I don't know. That just annoys me. I mean, both teams, don't get me wrong. Both teams are bad, might be the word, but both teams, they annoy a lot of fans because they're bullies in a sense. That's what they do. They're on the top, and they do it to each other a lot. Christian Horner, he'll make jokes about Toto. He'll say things about Mercedes and stuff. He'll make jokes about all these other people. And he gets painted as the villain, the really bad guy, which, yeah, but, he acts like a jerk, and he just kind of accepts the fact that in the role he is the jerk. He's the bad guy. He doesn't really try to fake anything. Whereas I look at Mercedes, dude, and this is just from my perspective. I could be, I see it happening. Everything at Mercedes, they don't get me wrong. I'm sure they're great people. They're nice people. They're a very successful team. But I look over there, and it's just I see the way I've seen it from a fan's perspective is that they act all nice, which they are, it's the fans and stuff. But then, they get treated like saints. They could do nothing wrong. And they do the exact same thing as Red Bull. And it's just oh, okay, Mercedes, you're cool. But when Red Bull does it, it's you guys suck. You guys are meanies. And I feel like this could turn into like a 20-minute rant, so I'm going to cut myself off eventually. You know, I don't know. I just am really enjoying this battle. I really, I like both Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen. Whoever wins, I'll be happy for them, but I don't know. Both of the teams annoy me. Don't get me wrong. Red Bull and Mercedes are both equally annoying at times, but I just don't like how Mercedes doesn't get as much hate as Red Bull, I guess. But, yeah, that's all I got. I mean, it was a really fun race last week in Brazil. Obviously, we had the controversy with Verstappen and Hamilton, and it's just such a tough call to judge, especially being a newer Formula One fan. I know people are going to be like, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about, but I don't know. That's just my perspective of it. Let them race. As long as they're not wrecking each other every week, running each other off the track every week, let them race. We got a couple races coming up. Qatar's going to have a lot of runoff area, and if it happens again, then yeah, penalize him if he does it again. Saudi Arabia, there's not runoff room, so, that would result in a wreck. But anyways, I'm looking forward to these last 3 races. Sunday, we will have a race review up for the Qatar Grand Prix. Might do something after qualifying tomorrow. I don't know yet, but thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and let me know your opinion in the comments.